everybody, and thank you for attending this evening. Before we begin, I will read the webcasting introduction. This meeting is to be webcast. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of subsequent repeated viewing, with copies of the recording being made available for those that request it. By being present in this meeting, it is likely that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in your image becoming part of the broadcast. You should be aware that this may infringe your human and data protection rights. If you have any concerns, then please speak to the webcasting officer. Please could I also remind members to activate their microphones before speaking. Second item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Jackie.
Yes, Chairman, apologies from Councillor Avey.
Wonderful. And we don't have any substitute members, unfortunately, though it's good to welcome Councillor Burrows, Councillor Morgan, and Councillor Wixley and Rose, Councillor Brooks and Councillor Heap on the screen. Good turnout this evening. Next item is the declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations this evening? No? And the minutes from the last meeting, is everyone happy to confirm that they are a complete record? Great. Council Housebuilding report. This is a substantial item tonight on phases 4 to 5, and I'm going to pass over to Rochelle, who's on the screen.
Good evening, everyone. There isn't anything additional to add to the report that's been issued. The only other additional thing that's happened since is there was a note in there regarding Checkersby going up to planning committee on the 8th of June. That wasn't recommended for approval and is hoping to go to the strategic planning committee on the 29th of June. But I'm just waiting confirmation for that. So there will be an update of that within the next report.
Thank you. DDMC. Is that just to confirm that's DDMC?
Yeah. Yeah.
Checkers. Thank you. Councillor Wixley's got a question. Sorry, Councillor Wixley. Councillor Philip had one. I didn't spot him.
All right.
Yeah. In the first paragraph of the executive summary, it says substation work starting and due to have a full site present from August 2022, June 2022. I assume it's one or other, or a duration and the dates are wrong.
Rochelle, would you be able to confirm on that?
Sorry, I didn't hear. I heard the dates. Did it say June 20? Can you repeat it for me? It's a bit, the volume's a bit.
Yes, in the first paragraph of the executive summary, talking about the substation works starting and is due to full site present from, and then it gives you August 2022, June 2022. It doesn't make sense. It has to be one or other or a different duration or something.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That should be August. It was meant to be June 2022, but it's pushed back to August 22. Apologies.
Thank you. If none of the committee members have any questions, Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Actually, I tried to get your attention when you mentioned the minutes. I haven't got an issue with the minutes, but I've got an issue arising from them. I don't know if I can raise that now, or perhaps later on.
Perhaps later on under any other business, I'll come back to you if that's okay.
Okay.
And Rochelle, just to highlight that we've got a number of handovers coming on stream in this year and in 2023. Do we have a tally of the number of completed council houses since the programme began now?
Yes, I can get a tally. We only have Pick Hill and Bushfields due to hand over. Those are the last. Everything else has handed over in phase 4. And we are expecting some units next year from one of our partners.
Thank you, Rochelle. And just a couple of other points just from me. The Pick Hill scheme in Waltham Abbey is to be named after Don Spinks, who's a former chairman of this council, and his wife Liz was also a former chairman of this council. So I know that we're looking to arrange an opening ceremony for that, but just to remind you and put that on your radar. Yeah. And also, I don't know if it comes separate to this report, but is there any update on the scheme we're doing with St John's Church in Epping?
So there hasn't been a formal update given to me regarding St John's. I know that Heritage England had a review of the scheme and were happy with the changes that had been made. So what I will do is get the latest where we are on it, and then I'll update you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Councillor Bedford?
Yeah, just a quick one, Michelle. Obviously, we've got stuff now being signed off and at completion. Have we noticed any increase in costings, probably being post-COVID? Because we keep hearing about suppliers in short demand. I wonder if there's been an impact on the budget with regarding final completion prices against estimated prices. Thank you.
Yeah, so overall, we're seeing about a 15% increase in cost. Largely probably that where that's affected or going to affect the most is phase 5, because obviously the increased costs and things like Checkersby and Ladyfields, where a couple of years ago when they were looked at, they didn't have that increased cost. So the new budgets will have to pick that up or include that they've got the cost. The benefit, I guess, with having fixed rates with most of what's in phase 4, any variations have been agreed as we've been going along. So where there's been a price increase on something and the need to change something, where there's been a supply issue, we've agreed that as we've gone along, and the contingencies have been enough to support that. Where we've had a couple of schemes that the contingencies but weren't enough, we've used our available Section 106 contributions to cover that cost.
Thank you. Do you have any follow-up questions? Thank you. Councillor Patel?
Thank you, Chairman. I think in future, when we get progress reports, I think it'd be useful to, when each of the different projects are broken down, there's scheme notes. And I think what would be useful is if we could have dates attached to each of the scheme notes so that we can track the progress as we move along. Because throughout the report, and it may be the wrong assumption that I'm making, but the red should indicate the most recent entry into the scheme notes. But I've seen that they're located at different points in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases. But I'll give, using the example of Pentlow Way and Bucker's Hill, for example, the red has been annotated next to different points, so it just helps to track the progress.
I think that's a good point, Councillor Patel, and just to note as well, I think it would be good to have almost like a running tally with also progress points next to it, perhaps as a summary at the beginning of this report, just so we can have more of an idea of what's been completed, what's online, and also just where, if it's on, on schedule or whether there's any delays. If we could do that in the next report, that would be really, really handy. And actually, if we can backdate it as well, just so we've got a bit more of an idea of what we've actually delivered.
Sure.
Thank
No
you. Councillor Wixley?
Yeah, I think on perhaps the point that Councillor Patel was just making, I think it would be helpful if councillors knew when developments in their wards have been completed. I noticed that there's one been completed in my ward, and I think there's people are living there already, so it'd just be interesting to know when that's done. And also, I think that's called Young Close, and I just wondered how the names are arrived at, because there's quite a few roads in Debden which are named after individuals who are involved in saving Epping Forest, so there's some sort of historical connection there. But I'd be curious to know how Young Close got its name. And I mean, I've got some other questions, but perhaps Rochelle might want to answer that first.
Thank you, Councillor Wixley. And I think that point on the handover and when sites are completed is a good one. And actually, if we can make sure that we do that, Rochelle, from a housing point of view. In terms of the naming of sites, I think there was a bit of an oversight in the pandemic in terms of going to the Cabinet member for approval of names. However, that has now been rectified, and I've recently named, what sites have come up, the Don Spinks site, and also we're looking to name another Waltham Abbey site after a local councillor. But certainly if there was any new sites in your ward or certainly any Loughton divisions, I would liaise with the ward councillors on that.
Chairman, if I can just come back, do we know how Young Close got its name?
I'm not sure. I don't know if Rochelle can answer that or whether it's before your time, Rochelle.
Yeah, so just on the notifications of completions, good idea. I've implemented it for actually internally. There's a group email, so I'll create a group email with the councillors on, and maybe it might just be useful information for everyone to see what's completed across the district anyway. So that's not a problem. I can get that set up. And like Holly said, there has been. I think this predates myself, but there was an oversight of the procedure in terms of naming. From my understanding, there's a few schemes that there isn't, as far as I'm aware, any historical backing behind that particular name. And I don't think any of the others had that connection either. Since I've been here, any of them that have been named, I have approached Councillor Whitbread to discuss them, and then I think she's carried the conversations on with others. So that will continue, but there isn't essentially a way that it was picked up. I think they've just honestly been just picked at random, and we've looked at speaking to street naming and numbering. They just picked roads that there weren't already, there wasn't already a Young of anything in the locality, and that's kind of what they've gone with.
Right. The other thing which I think perhaps hopefully you could take up, Rochelle, that that there is a consultation with councillors, because we've got some new councillors, and I just wonder if they can sort of be informed about the council house building programme, and in fact how they should also be informed that they can perhaps have site visits and stuff like that.
I think that's a good idea. Councillor Wixley, I think we will, whether it be in the members' bulletin or whether it will be in a kind of physical briefing, but that would be a good idea. Perhaps also something for the Community Select Committee to look at afresh as well. But obviously it goes to Cabinet very regularly, so I would encourage all new members to come along and engage at that stage as well. Thank you. Councillor Heap?
Thank you. I'd just like to address the overspend on all of these projects, because it's quite enormous. It's not an insignificant amount of money. And in Buckerstill, Hornby May, I think it was £148,000 overage, which is 74 square metres at most standard building costs, which is huge. And when you look at the Ladyfields, it's gone up by £2 million, so that's now £90,000 a bedroom, which is again huge. And the figure that was just mentioned, I mean, I know materials have gone up, we all know that, but 15% is what Qualis charge as an admin fee plus another 8% supervisory fee. So is that also included in this costing?
Thank you, Councillor Heap. And I think I got most of that, but it was slightly blurry. And actually, I think the good thing about the HRA business plan is it does kind of make provision for where there might be a slight increase in costs, and actually tries to keep us on track as much as possible. I'm not sure about the exact reasoning behind those cases, and I will pass to Rochelle on that. Although I am aware on some of the garage sites there were some issues around contamination. So as well as rising costs, there were some issues with kind of clearing the contamination site. But our
Chairman, but as well as that, I mean, we have covered it a couple of other times in this committee that they bring in a new estimating tool that's going to allow us to be more accurate. There was a significant problem with the approach they were taking before. We've covered that in depth a couple of times, and I haven't seen anything significantly different on this report compared to the previous report.
Thank you, Councillor Phillip. And Rochelle, do you have anything further to add to that?
So obviously with the new system that we've got, it is looking at the schemes on phase 5. We can't, as I said in previous meetings, we can't undo what's already been done within phase 4. And there are schemes that have gone over budget, largely, as Councillor Holly Whitbread mentioned, with contamination. There was issues with the foundations, and I've touched upon this before. We've had an engineer who probably wasn't making the best decisions in terms of how we go about our foundation. So those things have had to change. So what you do see is across phase 4, and it has affected the programme in terms of cost. But moving forward, phase 5 and further phases to follow, we are using our tools that we do have now available, and we are more aware of what things that we've had happen before. So looking at contamination, we're putting in larger amounts of money for that, considering that they are garage sites. So whilst I appreciate that it may seem that there are quite large overspends, yes, there is within phase 4, but we have addressed why they are. We've had 360-degree, as they call them, meetings with our contractors to look at things that went wrong, what didn't work so well, what has worked well, and we're addressing those moving forward within our specifications, our contracts. So the changes are being made.
Thank you, Rochelle. Councillor Brooks?
Thank you. Could I come back quickly?
We'll go to Councillor Brooks, then we'll come back to you, Councillor Heap.
Thank you.
Are you on mute, Rose?
Apologies, Councillor Whitbread. I have been to at least 2 or 3 of these recently, so I apologise. But it was very, very helpful to have the statistics about the increased costs. Thank you for preparing those. Just one query I had. Basically, is a basic one, really. We're financing from the right to buy sales and loans. Is that correct?
Rochelle?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have any follow-up questions on that, Councillor Brooks?
No.
Okay, thank you. And back to Councillor Heap.
Thank you. It was just, could we have a bit more detail when things go wrong so that we know exactly what is going wrong, if it's foundations or if it's asbestos?
Yeah, I
and
know
also
we've...
the question of Qualis was ignored. Is Qualis now going to build it, which puts 23% on the job?
So I have shared previously, in previous times where there has been an issue, so whether it's been what the increased costs have, I have shared that information in previous cabinet meetings, and apologies about the Qualis. The programme that I'm working on has got nothing to do with Qualis. The costing that I've given, the percentage, is based on the BCIS. It's nothing to do with what Qualis may or may not be charging, and I don't have any involvement in that.
Thank you. And just to say, Councillor Heap, that we do have extensive, and we have had extensive discussions around these issues before at these meetings. I know you've been in attendance at many, but we do discuss when things go wrong, and that's the whole point of being here. But I know some of these schemes that have been touched upon tonight have been discussed in quite a lot of detail before, and I don't think we were ignoring your question on Qualis, but I don't think we can hear you very well from your car. So, Councillor Bedford, did you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. I don't think it's a case of what's gone wrong. It's a case more of an overspend, which has been explained by the officer. We do know what it's not gone wrong. We do know there were issues, and we've known for some time there were issues around contamination and cleaning up the sites. These were garage sites, after all. So I don't think it's a case of what's gone wrong. It's a case of how do we explain the overspend.
Yeah.
And I think that's been explained quite in detail.
I think so, and I think 2 things just to highlight. Councillor Phillip has highlighted that actually the tools that we were using before weren't quite calculating exactly how much things should cost, so that's where there's been some errors. So perhaps we basically under-budgeted, but hopefully the tools moving forward will stop that. And actually, in terms of the garage sites, we've identified that they do get contaminated, which is why we're moving away from the garage site models for future council house building programmes. Rochelle, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just add maybe what I'll do for prepare for the next one is, obviously we've had the review with our 2 main contractors, Indicon and TSG, and I'm happy to share, openly what the discussions were just around what we felt could have been done better, where, and again, not like Councillor said, not where things have gone wrong, but understanding that things have happened. For example, they've had surveys done, contamination, they bore the holes, they find some, and it feels from their surveys, it's localised to that particular area. And we all know sometimes that when you're building, until you dig deeper, you don't necessarily know what you're dealing with. And I think that's where we need to put more in to the budgets which we have been given, looking at schemes going forward to be able to just, caveat any of those issues happening. But I will share our 360 reviews. They have been written up, so I'll get a copy of those and I can share that as well.
Thank you. And just to note as well, in terms of the HRA finance, obviously the business plan plays a really kind of key role in setting out how we're going to spend the money moving forward and making sure that we are estimating the cost of delivery properly. So that's a really important piece, and if anyone hasn't had a chance to look at that cabinet decision, please do take a look at it. Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I know the point's already been made several times today, and I've made the same point in previous meetings around making sure that that we are as close to the final build-out costs as what we've.
I think we've covered that point, Councillor Patel.
But the point I wanted to make was that obviously there were hurdles when we experienced difficulties when we did phase one, and the learnings from phase one, and I mean, you know, we keep talking about the contamination of land, etc. But you know, we're on phase 4 now, and really better contingency should have been put in place. What I want to query is actually the model of construction that we're actually implementing on these sites, because essentially, if a contractor takes on a job, they tender for the project, and that price that they quote is the price. So why are we having to bear the cost of any overspend if there is contamination?
Thank you, Councillor Patel. I will pass to Rochelle, but we have covered this point in quite a lot of detail. Rochelle?
Yeah, just to quickly add, so where there has been, they make a judgment on what they think is going to cost, which is accepted. If they find anything over and above that, we then have to pay for that. If there's more contamination than what we've identified in our initial survey, that is our responsibility to pick that up. That wouldn't fall with the contractor. Where we've looked at, so let's say, for example, Lower Alder to Pool, we've been out to tender for that recently. We've asked them to consider additional costs for things like contamination over and above what's in the survey. So we're, as early as tender stage, making those changes to avoid this being an issue going forward. And as I say, I appreciate that from your perspective, phase 1 to phase 4 has had very similar errors in terms of budgets, but that's happened. It's in the past. We're moving forward, and I'm confident that phase 5 will have a better outcome.
And just to note as well, the sites that we're looking at up until phase 4, when I took over as a cabinet member, they were kind of online and they'd already kind of started as projects. And actually with our new housing team, Rochelle and Deborah, we have looked at a new approach, and I think we've gone round in circles a bit on this tonight. So, Councillor Wixley, do you have anything further to add?
I do actually. I have a couple of specific questions. On page 29 is reference to Chester Road, which I think is the Young Close development I mentioned earlier. And it says no contingency left, and then parking signs. So I wondered what that was. And likewise in Kirby Close, it refers to general variations, including omitting minor items. I just wondered if Rochelle could explain what those two things are about.
Rochelle?
So the one with the parking, the no parking sign, so what we've put in place is underneath some of the road names, we've put private parking to suit where we've come across issues with parking locally, and trying to preserve the parking for the residents who are going to be living in those properties. We've added signs. So things like that, which are not included in a part of the initial contract, that creates a variation cost, and we obviously then, we get the contractors to cost that for us, and then if we accept the cost, that gets added on. So that would be in addition. And I think you've mentioned general variations, if I heard correctly. That is just month to month. So each month, if there are any variations over and above what was initially agreed, they are looked at by our quantity surveyor. They look at that, and then they tell us whether they consider that to be reasonable cost. They go out to the market and review it, and that should be the only types of variations that are on there. And then I get sent them and have to go through each one to approve whether we'll accept it or not. So
in that case, those minor items have been omitted, I take it.
Yeah, so we have there are sometimes, if the contractors have been able to demonstrate, well, actually we can make a saving here, and they've costed us for something, they then remove it.
Okay, and in the case of the parking signs, does that mean, because it says no contingency left, does that mean that there aren't going to be any of these parking signs?
Oh no, they have been put in.
All right.
I think what you'll be looking at is at the present time now, there is no contingency, and what I put in place from our Section 106 ensured that we were able to cover what was left from that scheme that needed to be done. The parking signs were a late addition. It was something that was discussed between myself and the Estates and Lands team, that they felt was necessary to try and better manage the parking in those particular areas.
Okay, right, thank you.
Thank you.
I've got some items in any other business if we're going to go to that next, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wixley. So if that's that, is everyone happy to note the progress report? Thank you. And then any other business, and back over to Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, Chairman, it was on the minutes on page 9. It was an issue which I raised and discussed with Rochelle last time concerning Castile Close, where a resident had wanted to speak to some officers and had left a message and not got a reply. And after the meeting on the 8th of March, I did give Rochelle the residents' phone numbers and details, but unfortunately she's still not heard from anybody. I think the point here is that I don't think there's an update on Castile Road, what progress that's making.
Councillor Wixley, I think this is probably a point to take offline with Rochelle.
Yeah,
a specific piece of casework.
I can do that, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan. I knew you were going to ask that.
We can't hear.
Give a progress report on the garages at the Coles at Matching Green. Some years ago, there was going to be 2 houses built there, but that was refused due to the loss of parking of the garages, and you were going to look at another scheme or do something about increasing the parking when the garages go. Is there any progress on that, the Culvers at Matching Green?
I haven't got an update on that, but I will look into it. Can you hear me okay? I haven't got an update, but I will look into it. It's not a site that I'm familiar with, so I'll take a look at what details are on the system regarding it, and then I can update.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. And just to add to Rochelle, I will chase Rochelle on that tomorrow. But last time I looked into it a couple of months ago, there was no update. I know when it went to Planning Committee, obviously Planning Committee kind of refused it, and there were a number of issues there. So I'll try and get an update for you as soon as possible. And also on the parking issue, which is being investigated, but it's a kind of a triple-hatted issue. So, yeah. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whitbread. Just one query, really, to Rochelle. For about 7 months now, there's been scaffolding on one of the phase 1 or 2 houses, number 27, I think, on Burton Road. And these were only finished very recently. And I just wondered what the problem was, because the scaffolding has been there for months and months. Yeah, it is outrageous that it's been there that long. The issue there is the roof needs to be replaced. It's a latent defect, which I've escalated with the contractors. The contractors are waiting for the roof tiles to come in stock. So unfortunately, they've had supply issues getting the roof tiles. And it was, the property is empty, by the way. The residents have moved out. We've moved them to a new property whilst the works are being carried out. And all of the money that we have lost will be reclaimed back from the contractor, and I will make sure it's done. Yeah. So just to recap, the fault, the roof was leaking then? Yeah. So the roof was leaking. It's been a slow leak over time that has got progressively worse. It wasn't helped by obviously COVID being around and people not going in to be able to assess things. So it got progressively worse in that stage. I visited the property myself a few times. We made the decision to move the residents out as a young family, and we've been working with the contractors ever since to try and get the issues resolved. Some of the work has been completed, but the roof, essentially, the roof tiles, they need them, and hasn't been the supply. And that was a meeting I had last week. That was the last date. They were waiting for the tiles to come in. As soon as they are in, they've already got the relevant team set up to go out and carry out the work. It's just the roof tiles, unfortunately, that has dragged it out longer than it should have been. Yeah. And as a general principle then, because I know when my brother had a massive extension done, that was an extension, not a new house though. He had a certain percentage that he kept back for snagging for a year.
Yeah.
And do we do that?
Yeah, so we're holding a retention,
Yeah.
which won't be paid out to the contractors until we're satisfied that the works within the whole site have been completed to a satisfactory standard. So I am still holding back on that, and it won't be released until the work is done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Rochelle, if you could just get an update on that over to myself and copying Councillor Brooks and the ward councillors, that would be useful. Thank you. Is there any other business? Councillor Bedford.
Yeah, just that there's a bit of a learning curve there as well. If we put scaffolding up, we pay for scaffolding by the week, normally in the building industry. So it might be advantageous in the future if a project comes up like this again and we have to scaffold a house, we don't put the scaffolding up till the builder's ready to go, because we've probably paid quite a bit.
It's actually the contractors that have put the scaffolding up, not us. So it's a cost to themselves and not reflected on us at all. They put it up initially to do their investigation to sort of see what the problem was, and I think they probably themselves didn't expect to find as much as they have done that needs to be replaced. But the cost is to them.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it doesn't look like we have any other business, so exclusion of public and press. Got no public or press, so close the meeting. Thank you everyone for attending.
Rochelle, can we stay